G'day guys, this is Andrew Price here from blenderguru.com, and in this video I'm going to be tackling 3 of everybody's greatest fears: lighting, texturing, and bullets. So this is something that a lot of you guys have been requesting, a tutorial on how to render bullets in Blender. Other people have been requesting a tutorial on texturing or lighting. So I figured why not just combine the 3 and have a little bit of fun. So that's hopefully what we're going to be doing in this tutorial, especially tackling the advanced side of texturing, so using things like specularity maps, bump maps, reflection maps, things like that to give a slightly more realistic result. So that's what we're going to be doing. Now, before we start the tutorial, I do have a little bit of a story to tell you. As some of you know, I used to be in the Australian Army Reserves. I quit recently, but I was in it for about 3 years or so. And when you first sign up, you have to go and do 1 month basic training. So they take you out to a campsite in Kapuka, which is a really tiny town out in the middle of nowhere in Australia, and you have to do 1 month training. And part of your training is you have to pass the shooting range test. So you go to a shooting range and you have to fire bullets accurately, and they give you a score and things like that. But at the end of the day, after you've finished shooting, they have to make sure that you don't have any bullets on you when you leave, because you walk all the way back to the barracks and you have your rifle with you and it's empty. But if you were to bring bullets back with you, either accidentally or purposely, then you could run amok and shoot up the place. So of course they're very, very strict that when you leave, you don't have any rounds on you. So you have to open up the contents of your bag, pull out your pockets, disassemble your rifle, do all that, make a declaration: "Sir, I have no bullets on me, sir." They would search you, they would clear you, and then you would leave. So I did that, and I was cleared, and we were walking back to the barracks, and I don't know how, but as we were walking, I felt in my pocket something round, something hard, and I knew exactly what it was. I pulled it out, and it was a bullet. I don't know how it got there. I don't know how I missed it during the search, but I had a bullet with me. I knew this was a huge mess up because, you know, you had to make a declaration that you had nothing on you, and now suddenly I had it. So I had to tell the corporal. I said, "Corporal, I don't know how I accidentally brought this with me." And he said, "Bryce, you idiot!" And he took me back to the barracks and he disciplined me, filled out a report, that kind of stuff, and had to do all that stuff. You know, I felt like an idiot. And I don't know how, but the next day, I'm not kidding, the exact same thing happened again. We finished shooting at the range, we're walking back, and again, I felt in my pocket another bullet. So you can imagine how I was feeling. Destroyed, right? So I said, "Corporal, I accidentally brought another bullet back with me." And you could just hear the entire platoon of 40 people groaning at once. The corporal walked over to me, took the bullet out of my hand, and threw it into the bushes. And he turned to me and he said, "Price, you would have to be the dumbest recruit I have ever met." And I looked at him, and I noticed that he wasn't actually pissed at the fact that I'd brought the round with me. He was pissed at the fact that I'd told him. He wanted me to keep it a secret and to dispose of it myself without telling anyone. So that was one of the things that I learned from the army, how to be dishonest. So from that day forth, whenever I found a round in my pocket or something like that, I just hurl it into the bushes. So somewhere out there right now in Australia, there's a whole bunch of bullets out in the middle of the bush that look probably exactly like the ones here, all rusted and dirty and everything. And yeah, so there you go. A little bit of a story I thought I'd share. Let's get into the tutorial. So go ahead and open up a new scene in Blender. Now the first thing we need to do, obviously, is to model the bullet, okay? So go ahead and delete the default cube and replace it with a cylinder. Now I'm going to uncheck cap ends and also set the number of vertices to 8, okay? So it's looking quite squarish and blocky right now. But what I'm going to do is add a subsurf modifier at level 2. So, yeah, if we started with 32 vertices, right now there will be way too many vertices. So setting it at 8, then adding a subsurf modifier fixes that little problem there. Okay, so Now what I'm going to do is go ahead and load in a background reference image. Now you can grab this image off Blender Guru. I'll put a link for it on there. But yeah, this is an image that I pulled off of Flickr of, you know, roughly the type of bullet that we want. Now, don't get too carried away with the modeling process. It doesn't need to look exact. You know, don't go too anal on all the fine details and everything. I mean, it's just, we need it just to the point where it looks like a bullet. You know, for this image that we're trying to make, it's not physically accurate. You don't need to get measurements or anything like that. Just work on it to the point where it looks like a bullet and then stop. You know, it's good to get into the habit of just, you know, working fast and efficiently and learning when to stop. So, yeah, it's good to get in that habit, I think. So, as you can see, I'm doing it quite roughly. Okay, scale that up about there. Put a lip on it, like so. Might make this a little bit bigger. Alright, I'm going to add one loop cut here, one loop cut here, and that's it. So, pretty easy. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing for this top portion here. It's a little bit quicker. Hit Control 2 to add a subsurf modifier. Little tip. And then extrude the top part and scale it inwards. Okay, so it's looking pretty good, I think, for what we want. Yeah, not bad. Yeah. Cool. I'm going to go ahead and save this now. So, yeah, Blender's been... Whoa. Blender's been crashing a fair bit recently, so I'm going to make sure I do that now rather than later. Cool. Alright, I'm going to combine both of these now by pressing Control J, so they're now one solid object. I can go ahead and remove the background image now. We don't need that. We're finished. And what I'm going to do is just position this about there. Just want to get the scaling right, because I know, you know, when I add lights later on, they need to be, you know, correct scale to the scene, so that's pretty good. Alright, awesome. So we've finished the modeling of the bullet. Now we can get into the fun stuff, which is the texturing and materials. Yay. Alright, I'm going to move things around a little bit so it's easier to see on this tiny little screen. Materials. Alright, so adding a new material. I'm going to change the color first of all to a, you know, slightly yellow color like that. It's pretty good. I'm turning off specularity, and we'll get to that later. Okay, so go to the texture panel and add a new texture. Change it to image. Now, the first image that I'm going to be using, this is one that I grabbed off cgtextures.com. It's called Grunge Maps 123. I'll put a link there again for you guys to just grab it. Now, this texture, kind of like a moldy, you know, type wall texture, whatever. As you can see, if you just have it, you know, set by its default settings, what it's going to do is it's actually going to use that entire texture to color the material. So actually there's not going to be any of this diffuse color actually showing through. So to fix that, what you need to do is go down here to blend and change it from mix to multiply. Okay, so you can see the change there in the preview window. So this is set to mix and this is set to multiply. Multiply just takes the darker parts of the image and then sort of overlays it over the top of our original color there. So it's important to recognize when to use multiply. Now I'm turning down color just because I don't want it to be too overpowering. I don't want it to be too darkish. And I'm going to increase the contrast as well, just so it tightens it a little bit. You don't have too much of that grunge texture showing through in the wrong places. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Now, for the actual mapping of the image, you can just change that to tube, but I found there was problems. I'm not sure if it's a bug, but when I was rotating the bullet later on, it wouldn't rotate the texture. So what you need to do, and I find it's a good habit to get into the, you know, good practice, is to UV unwrap it. So I'm just selecting this back edge row here. If you hold down Alt, by the way, and right click, you can select the edge loops there. So I'm selecting those edge loops there, pressing Control E, and then hitting Mark Seam, okay? Going to do the same for the top part there, Mark Seam. Now if I split this window, UV Image Editor, and then hit U, and then select Cylinder Projection. So as you can see, it's pretty much guessed exactly how to unwrap that cylinder. So I'm just shrinking it down so it fits in that gridded area there. I'm not sure why it always does this, like it puts those vertices there instead of dropping them over there. I mean, I don't know why. It's just, it's a little bit of an annoyance, but it's not too bad, so I'm just going to leave it. That's cool. Alright, so now I'll set the mapping to UV. Now that we've UV unwrapped it, might as well use it. Also, while I'm at it, I might as well go ahead and check normal. So I want to give it just a little bit of bump mapping. Okay, I don't want to go crazy with it. So just something around that should be fine. So just really light, and that'll just kind of just slightly raise that texture a little bit. Let's have a look how it looks now rendered. Okay, not bad, pretty good. All right. Oh, and Blender's crashed. How appropriate. Good to get that on. Good to get it on camera, so you know it doesn't just happen to you. It happens to everyone. Cool. All right. Add another text. I'm gonna rename this texture actually. Ding, ding, ding. All right. So we're gonna add another image texture. Another one, of course, from my favorite website, cgtextures.com. Changing the mapping to UV. Setting the color to 0.6. Changing that to multiply again. So pretty much doing the exact same thing. Don't really need to explain it. I can just stop talking, really. But it's more fun to talk, so I'll keep talking. Yeah. Cool. Alright, so that's we've got two color maps now. Giving it a little bit of bump mapping again on this one. Oh, actually, I'm going to invert the bump mapping, because this texture kind of has like big chunks, like big cutaways. So I'm inverting the bump inverting the bump mapping so it looks like it's actually cut away at the material. There you go. That's what I'm trying to say. Alright, I'm going to add another texture. So this texture is Metal Bear 146. Now this one I'm actually going to use to affect the specularity channel. Okay, so I'm changing the mapping to UV. Now uncheck color and check specularity intensity. Now you'll notice that the specularity is there, but you can't actually see any of the original texture showing through on that specularity. The reason for that is that I have not yet checked RGB to intensity. Now what that will do is it'll convert that image from, you know, an RGB image, you know, standard image, to a black and white image, so it can actually use the values, the black and white values from that as part of the texture. So that's very important. I'm also going to check negative so that you know, the specularity applies to the parts of that I want. You know, just fool around with the settings till you find something that works. But I found this is pretty good. Turning down the specularity a bit, maybe 0.6, and I'm also just going to turn up just this specularity here. Now normally I would just say just turn off specularity, leave that as 0, and then leave all the specularity up to the texture itself. But I find if you give it just a little bit of normal specularity there, it just sort of gives like a slight haze around the textured specularity. Now I don't know, just a little thing I recognized I thought was kind of cool. Thought I'd share with you guys. And I'm going to give it also a little bit of bump mapping as well. Something like that. Maybe negative. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Now I'm going to add a final texture. Now this is going to be the real bump mapping, the harsh bump mapping. And this is going to be a scratch texture. So this one right here. Now this is going to be what makes it look like it's been dinted and scratched a lot. So what I'm going to do, change the mapping to UV, turn off color, and then check normal. Okay. Now I want this to be negative because these scratches need to cut away, make it look like it's cut away at it. So I'm inverting it, and that'll give us the right effect. I'm also going to turn up the contrast. Now basically I want this this sort of preview thing there to show up mainly black, but so you can still see just the white little scratches there. So the closer you can get to that result, the better. So, you know, it's just a matter of fooling around with the settings a bit till you get what you're after. Yeah, I think that should be good. Let's have a look at it now. Okay, oh yeah. I'll check negative on that specularity texture. I'm not sure why it's not showing up right way. Okay, alright, well, the normal value for that texture needs to be, yeah, the other way. I think because, yeah, it's black background with white or whatever, you know.
Just fiddle around with it till it works. Twist it backwards. Yeah, make it cooperate. Cool. Alright, now one thing to note from our little window here, you'll notice that the textures look kind of squished, like the aspect ratio is off. The reason for that is that the circumference of the bullet is obviously a lot less than the height of the bullet. Now, it's using the same sort of squared looking textures for both. So what we need to do is go here underneath mapping for our image and set the X value to 0.5. What that'll mean is it'll use half the image for the circumference, and yet the Y is still 1, so it'll use the whole image for that part. And that way it'll just give us, yeah, a lot nicer looking textures. Yeah, you won't get any of that harsh texture stretching going on, so that's why I'm doing that. And there you go, so it's looking a lot nicer now, I think. At least I think so. One other thing, quite important, the specularity. Now, for every other tutorial I've ever done, and for most objects really, you never change the specularity from white, okay? It's always white for every other object except for metallic objects. I mean, I'm not a scientist, I don't know, the ins and outs of chemicals and things like that, but I do know that when an object is metal, you need to change the specularity color, okay? And I'll show you. Okay, so that's it set as white, and that's the specularity set as orange. So it's a very, very subtle change, but it does make a lot of difference in the final image, and it will become immediately recognizable to your eye that it is a metallic object once you change that specularity to, just slightly near the original color of it. So this is, yellow. The specularity is a slight orangey color. Something like that should be good. Okay. Looking pretty good. Now, one thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to make this top part right here, I'm going to give it a different material. So I'm going to hit plus. So it's actually duplicated that bottom texture there. And I'm going to hit the 2 next to it so it's its own unique texture, like so. I'm going to change the color of it to a kind of an orangey color like that. Maybe not that orange. I'm going to go overboard. And I'm going to increase the specularity there. And all of these textures need to be unique. So you need to press that little number next to them. I don't know why it doesn't do that automatically when you just make it a unique material. It should, I think. I don't know. It's my personal preference. Alright, I'm going to turn up that specularity there. It's just a matter of making it look a little bit different. And I'm going to turn down this one here. Let's have a look now. Oh yes, the other thing. To make it apply to just that area there. So I've got the top, this material there selected. I then need to hit assign, okay? And now they're different materials. Okay, so there you go. You can see the difference now. The top part's a little bit more. I might just turn some of this coloring down a little bit. It's just a little bit too in your face. The dog next door, I'm not sure if you can hear him, but he is barking up a storm. Always happens whenever the owner leaves. Just goes nuts. Drives me out the wall. Come on. If you have a dog and you leave the house in the morning and you know that he's barking whilst you're at work, shame on you. Shame on you. Anyway, a little rant there. Cool. Alright. I'm going to get a drink. Oh. Okay, cool. So, now that's done, let's get into the lighting. Might as well, while we're on it. Yeah, lighting. Yeah, let's do the lighting. Yeah. Alright, so I'm just going to select this lamp here. Going to change it to area. Area is my favorite type of lamp. It just gives nice even lamp, sort of even lighting over the whole scene. Very important. I'm just changing these values to, what I know worked for my original scene. So 16 distance, size is 15. And it's important you change the samples. If you leave it as 1, it's going to give harsh shadows. And as you increase the samples, it's going to give softer shadows. So I find 4 is kind of like the sweet spot. 4 samples usually looks pretty good, if not 6. So, okay, that's pretty good. What I'm going to do now, actually, no, I'll finish the lighting first. So that's my key lamp there, okay? So the key lamp is basically, the most powerful light for the scene. I'm now going to create a fill lamp, okay? So I'm changing that size of that to 10, and I'm making it half the energy of this my main key lamp. So this is my fill light here. I'm going to position it about there, and I'm also going to duplicate it, put another one directly underneath it, but I'm going to turn off diffuse. Excuse me. Oh, I'm turning off diffuse. Now, if you can guess what that means is this lamp here is only going to be showing up as a reflection on the side of the bullet, okay? It's not actually going to light the bullet. It's just going to show up as a reflection because I've unchecked diffuse, okay? So let's have a look at how it looks now. Looks very, very bright. It could be because they're just a little bit too close to it, but, you know, whatever works. Doesn't matter. Not bad, not bad. It's very bright, but I'm sure we can fix that later. Alright, let's get on to the rest of it. Now, to form the original image where it makes it look like there's an infinite amount of bullets, well, first of all, we're not going to make an infinite amount of bullets. We're going to make a lot of bullets, but we're basically, the light is going to fall off, you know, as it goes out, so it's going to look like there's never-ending supply of bullets. Now, you might think to do that, we're going to use the array modifier, but we're not, okay? At least not yet. For the first row of bullets, or like the bullets that are really in frame, really close to the camera, I'm going to duplicate them individually, okay? So I'm going to hold down Alt-D, like that, just press it once. Alt-D, Alt-D, Alt-D. Now what that's doing is it's duplicating it and linking it. So now that if I change one of these vertices, they're now all linked, okay? That's why I'm using Alt-D instead of Shift-D. Somebody pointed me that on my last tutorial. They said, Andrew, what about Alt-D? And I was like, oh yeah. I forgot about that. How useful. Alright. So you can see I've made them slightly not perfect. So they're not all equally the exact distance apart, and they're kind of like a slightly wobbly line. Now that's deliberate. Okay, when you use the array modifier, it takes away all those imperfections, okay? It makes it look way too perfect than it should be, okay? So that by doing this by hand, you're getting hand sort of imperfections, okay? So I'm doing that for these ones that are close to the camera, but then, you know, as the rest of the bullets sort of fade off into the distance, we can use an array modifier to quickly fill the scene. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to duplicate all of those, Alt-D, Alt-D, and Alt-D again. Maybe one more for good times. Yeah. Alright, again, I'm just going to do the same. Just for some of these, not all of them. So the idea is to make it look like somebody placed these bullets here. They weren't set up by machine. You know, meticulously put out onto the floor kind of thing. Because, if you haven't heard yet, imperfection is the digital perfection. Cool. Awesome. Now, the other thing that we need to do is to rotate the bullets, okay? If we left them as they are currently, then you would see the exact front texture, and it would be very obvious that the textures have been repeated. Now, we are going to use the same texture for all of them, but if you rotate them, it looks less uniform, okay? So, you know, it is still using the same texture, but they're rotated, so it's not that obvious, okay? Now, you'll notice that I'm not going to rotate it usually past 90 degrees. The reason for that is that the seam, that red line there, is at the back of the bullets. If that comes to the front and is completely rotated 180 degrees, then that seam is going to be visible for the bullet, in the render, sorry. So it's important that you don't rotate. I mean, these ones on the end there, you can rotate a bit more because they're further away from the camera. You can get away with it. But yeah. So yeah, as you can see, it's a pretty hard job, but someone's got to do it. Alright. Cool. Alright, I'm going to change the background to black. I'm going to see how this looks now when rendered. Alright, so the bullets look very, very bright, for one. But also what I'm going to do is turn on the ambient occlusion, like that, set it to multiply. Okay, so ambient occlusion, by the way, if you don't know, just makes it so that if objects are close to each other, that they have darker shading. So it's makes it look a little bit more realistic. Now, these lamps look really way overpowering. I was hoping it was going to fix itself, but it doesn't usually happen, does it? That dog is cruising for a bruising. Alright. Alright, so it's looking a little bit better now. It's not perfect. One other thing that will help is adding some reflections to the material. That was one thing I forgot to do. So here, just add a mirror reflection to about 0.4. That's pretty good. Give it a bit of fresh Snell. And that'll just mean that it's not reflective completely over the top of everything. Just sort of on the edges, like that. And also, turn the gloss amount down to about, 0.8, 0.85, something like that. And that'll give softer reflections. That's really important. Once you started using soft reflections, you want to use it all the time. Because, in reality, most objects are reflecting. Just very, very softly, very subtly. So by having soft reflections, it does that. Allows you to have really, really soft, subtle reflections, which are, not too obvious, and it really helps to add realism to the scene. So that's why I'm adding it there. So it's not looking too great at the moment, but I'm sure it'll get better as we go along. I hope so, anyway. Alright, I'm going to duplicate this bullet, and now I'm going to start adding an array modifier. Like this. Oop. Yes, I'm turning the subsurf for these down to 1 because these are going to be off in the distance, so they don't need to be as high res. Whoa. Okay. I just want to make sure that they're all sort of lined up. Like so. Position that over there. Alright, pretty good. Going to add another array modifier underneath it. Okay, pretty good, I think. And increase the count of that. I think I want about 9, 10, something like that. That number of rows. Again, making sure that the subsurf is set to 1. Because, yeah, otherwise it's going to be really, really long render times. So you don't want that. Trust me. Cool. And I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to go ahead and reduce that like that. Turn the count way down. Do the same for this. Also, I think my camera, my focal length is actually supposed to be about 25. I think that's what I used for my original. That'll just make everything look a little bit closer and to the camera. I just find it makes it look a little bit more dramatic if you use a wide camera lens. Just something I've noticed anyway. Might just increase these number of bullets just so that you don't see them end in the thing. Because the idea is you want it to look sort of infinite. So that's why I'm doing it like this. Like so. Okay. Go ahead and render this now, see how it looks. Now I'm hoping that the bullets sort of fade off as it goes into the distance. It's not as perfect as I'd like, but that's looking alright. Okay, cool. What I'm going to do now is go ahead and add the floor. So I'm going to add a mesh plane now. A mesh plane. Cool. Looking pretty good. Going to give it a new material, turning off specularity. New image. Now this is again an image that I pulled off CG Textures. This is just a dirty concrete texture, which I find is quite nice for many scenes. I use it a lot. And one other thing I'm going to do is with our camera selected here, I'm going to give it a focal length. Not a focal length, depth of field distance length. Always get confused with those two. So I'm going to increase this So that little yellow line there, by the way, is going to be what's in focus for the camera. Everything else is going to be blurry. So I'm just going to make it, yeah, that point there in focus. Awesome. So now go ahead and hit render. Okay, so it's looking not bad. Ideally, I'd want it so that the light really fades off into the darkness there, but you know, it's workable for this solution. I think it'll look fine, especially once you add the you know, depth of field. You won't be able to see the background as clearly, so it's all right. Okay, so I've jumped over now to the compositor by hitting Control left arrow. That's the quickest way to do that. Control left arrow. Now, so first thing I'm going to do, actually, before I add the depth of field, what I'm going to do is add what is called a Sharpen node, okay? So it's under Filter, Filter. Then change that type to Sharpen. You'll see what it does. You can see that it just it takes the textures and it just makes them a little bit sharper, a little bit tighter. I use it a lot. It just gives everything sort of a nice kind of more grungy look. But you know, it's important you don't want to go overboard by giving it too much of a sharpen effect. So you know, make sure you get it right. But that's looking pretty good. I'm going to go ahead now and add a defocus defocus node. So this is going to give the depth of field. Very important for this image. Okay, like this. 20, no, still not visible. 5, okay, still not visible. Let's try 2. Alright, so we're getting there, Okay, so I've set it to 2, and that looks pretty good to me. If I wanted to, I could set it to samples as well. 64 samples. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Alright. Alright, what's next? Okay. We're going to add now a lens distortion node. What we're going to do is create a quick vignette. So a vignette, if you don't know, is that kind of like that black kind of smudgy area around the outside, which just sort of draws your focus towards the center of the image as opposed to the outside. So this is a quick way to do this. I think Mike Pan was the one who originally came up with this idea to do this method. It's quite cool. It means you don't have to like go ahead and, you know, create one in GIMP or anything like that. You can just use this and it works really well. Oh, save it. Yep. Okay, so it's done that. So you can see it's made the edges black there. So that's important. And to combine that with the original image, what we need to do, add a mix node, set the mix type to multiply. Join it up like so. Yep. Okay, pretty good. As you can see, the more you increase that, then the tighter that vignette becomes. What I might do actually before that, just to shake things up a little bit, is to add a lens distortion node. Place it here, like so. Distort it really a lot like that. Give it a little bit of dispersion as well. Not too much, guys. Don't go overboard. Dispersion is fun, but it's not fun if you take it too far. Okay, so that's just placing it before our vignette there. So now if I increase that vignette, it sort of darkens the edges there. Normally I would hit fit like that, but I find it just looks cool if it's like that. Kind of looks like a TV screen or something. Yeah, it's not bad. Alright, and finally, because I couldn't be bothered getting the lighting exactly right, I'm going to go ahead and add a color balance node. Color balance, of course, we're going to be also changing the colors of it a little bit as well, so we need this. But also what it allows you to do is to just alter these brightness values a little bit. If you couldn't get the lighting exactly right, this is kind of like cheating, you know. It's a quick way of just fixing things. Alright, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make these black colors. Just give it a slighter kind of reddish color, like so. Don't go overboard. I think that is overboard already. And I'm going to give this... actually, no, maybe I made the background blue. I think I might have. Yeah, there we go. Looking better. And I'm going to make that blue and that orange. Cool. Alright, so if you don't know, the right wheel it changes the highlights, the middle wheel changes the middle levels, and the left wheel changes the dark tones. So yeah, it's making the background, the black colors, slightly blue, the mid-tones are slightly blue, and it's making the highlights, which are the lighter parts of the image, slightly orange. So again, applying a little bit of color theory so that the blue, and then orange, they're on the opposite sides of the color wheel, so they complement each other a little bit. And that is basically it, guys. So, you know, you can fiddle around with this as much as you like. It's just a matter of doing it to whatever taste you have. And there you go. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, guys. As always, I'm interested in seeing whatever you create. If you do something interesting, something different, something fun with this tutorial, I'm really interested in seeing it. By the way, underneath this this tutorial, there's a link under the inspiration links for the Lord of War introduction. I highly recommend you check that out. Lord of War is a movie about guns or whatever, but there's this awesome introduction to the movie where it's it follows the life of a bullet from like its creation to its use, and it's really, really cool. Like, it's a 3D animation of a bullet exactly like this one here, and it shows you from its creation point to its being used, and it's great. It just blew my mind. I only just watched it like, you know, half an hour ago or something, but it's awesome. So check that out. It'll give you a bit of inspiration. Do something fun with this tutorial, and yeah, I'd like to see what you do. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.